We are Audiophile Skeptics, and here's a set of audiophile headphones. This is the Verum 2, which are planar magnetic. But before we jump into that, first of all, let's give you some context. We work on sound for video.
Mostly dialogue. Mostly your dialogue.
Mostly my dialogue, but you've also done some music mixing, right? So that's where we're coming from. But there are a few things we want to cover today and actually try these out and compare them to all the other headphones with which we are familiar in a kind of subjective way. This video is brought to you by Learn Light and Sound, where we have videos teaching you how to improve your lighting and sound for video, link down below. And thank you to Verum for sending over the Verum 2 headphones. Full disclosure, they sent them to us. The only thing we paid for was the postage. And we'll get into that. Okay, first, there are three main technologies that are used in headphones.
Let's find out what they are.
Yeah, tell us about them.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to hear from you about what they are.
Okay, all right.
I did research, but you have the experience, I think, to back it up a little more. So first up would be voice coil or dynamic drivers.
Yes. Okay.
What are those?
These are most common. So most affordable headphones are using dynamic drivers. And the driver is the thing that actually vibrates to make the sound waves. Dynamic drivers, I think the easiest way to describe them is they're basically like speaker cones on speakers. They have a voice coil. They move with an electromagnetic field that's produced by the sound that's sent through that copper wire. So those are the most common. They're probably the most affordable to manufacture and design.
Yeah.
And they can work really well, but they can work really well.
Cool. How about planar magnetic drivers?
Okay, so these are planar magnetic, and you can see the actual plane here, the diaphragm.
Think of like a flat mirrored surface on the inside of that headphone cup.
Exactly.
We can show you in a B-roll shot.
Yep, and it's suspended essentially between two sets of magnets on either side, and the electrical current is somehow sent.
Because the plane is filled with little wires.
Okay, it's filled with wires, or it's actually not necessarily wires. It's awesome. Actually, in these, I think, for example, they have a coating, a conductive coating.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there are two arrays of magnets, one on either side. I think I'm not sure how the current goes through. I think it goes through the diaphragm, but I'm not 100% sure. In any case, what's different about these is that you have a much bigger driver usually. For the same size headphone, you have a larger driver overall, and they're using these magnets and the conductive properties of the actual diaphragm itself. So that's the second kind.
Cool. I also have a note here. I think this is important.
Okay.
That the increase in surface area from a little cone-shaped diaphragm to a big plane allows these type of drivers usually to operate more distortion-free.
More distortion-free.
Because there's less of a shape to this driver, and so it's not going to make weird noises in the corners, so to speak.
Yeah. So you can see some of the specs if you go to not the web page, but the original funding. It was crowdsourced, the funding for this originally. So if you go to that website, it shows you some distortion measurements, and they're actually extraordinarily low on these. So what that means in practical terms is oftentimes, so for example, if you think about maybe in a video we have some dialogue and some music playing beneath it. The separation between them and the different frequencies of the different instruments within the music and the dialogue itself it just is more, it's clearer.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound as veiled or as kind of smeared together.
And we'll definitely come back to that later
We'll come back to that. Yeah, we'll see if that promise actually delivers with these. Okay.
Cool. How about electrostatic drivers?
Electrostatic drivers, these are probably the least common. They also have the ability to produce really distortion-free sound because they also use a very large diaphragm, which is essentially a suspended. I'm not going to get into all the details. We'll put a link for an article below that we looked at that has details on all of these, but it's an ultra-lightweight diaphragm suspended between perforated metal plates. One has a positive charge, one has a negative charge. These also can produce distortion-free. They have the same kind of, I think, effect as planar magnetic, but they generally require much more specialized headphone amplifiers to drive them.
Because they work on the principle of electrostatic rather than electromagnetism.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a little bit different. We don't have any of those to compare or talk about today, but let's go ahead and jump in and talk about the headphones that we have used the most and then compare them to these.
Okay.
All right. So let's start with the Beyerdynamic DT 700 Pro X. These are closed back headphones. You use these all the time. Okay.
So much.
All right.
Yeah. I wrote just really freaking well-rounded, which is true. So we divided this up into kind of funky sections. There's 2 pairs of closed back headphones and 3 of open. And my synopsis of all this before we dive into more detail in it was the closed back sounded one way, the open back sounded another, and within the open back category, the cone-driven versus planar magnetic-driven were also very different from each other.
Yes.
So there's kind of 3 different sounds we'll be talking about. But yeah, the DT700 Pro X's, that's like what I compare every other headphone I wear to. High comfort rating. And I said also no particular range or part of the stereo image sticks out in a good, bad, or unusual way. So I'm very used to how these sound. And when I hear something different or use different hardware, I can tell.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect gentle isolation, comfort rating 9 of 10. Would I mix dialogue in these? Yes.
Okay, cool. My impression of these as well. Beyerdynamic DT 700 Pro X. So I did a few things. Obviously, I've used these headphones a lot as well. I did a few things. I listened to a frequency sweep kind of to detect if there were any kind of funky things throughout the frequency range that it did.
Hills and valleys.
So this one I was actually able to hear bass starting at 25 hertz. Like this is really, they can produce bass at 25 hertz is when I first heard it. There are some odd valleys between 4 and 5 kilohertz and also between 7 and 8 kilohertz. So it's a little bit funky, super comfortable to wear, especially if you have to kind of mix for longer periods. I really find that good. Good passive isolation, so you're not getting a lot of outside sound. As with all closed back headphones, to me, they sound a little stuffy or a little claustrophobic. So I think the stereo imaging suffers as a result of that. It's not quite the same as on open back headphones.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Next set.
All right. The Atom Audio H200, which we have a full review of. We can link to that. These are definitely closed.
Yes.
Definitely closed. And that's cool if you need that. But it can be a lot sometimes. I did a whole set of music experiments, music listening tests for all of these pairs, and these did not do super well with, like, heavy rock. Yeah. Point being that if you are listening to or working with some kind of material that is very dense in, say, the mid to high range, it can feel like that's firing straight into your skull, and I found that to be a little overwhelming at times.
Okay.
It didn't feel like there was enough space in the headphones relatively to effectively... Like, it was technically accurate, but it was just too much to process, you know? So it didn't feel like they were big enough to really get that across.
Okay.
In any case, definitely isolating. I don't feel like they were stuffy, really. But again, that's a difference
that's
we've
subjective.
established between the two of our headphone preferences. Comfort rating, 7 of 10. They are pretty imposing. I mean, they're on your head.
Yeah.
Would I mix dialogue in them? Maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, they're a little much for long periods of time.
Yeah, you could get away with it, in other words. You could.
Yeah.
You could do the job
I
if
wouldn't.
you had to.
I would trust them to be accurate enough for me to make a good mix with them, but they wouldn't be my preference for comfort and what I'm used to.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think the same, similar for me, tight fit, because I have a very tall head, they were not terribly comfortable, to be honest. They were very good at passive isolation. So if you're going to be working in a noisy area, they can be really good for that. As with all closed back, slightly stuffy sounding to me. But they do have the accompanying plugin that allows you to tune the sound to pure. So I actually would trust these to do a mix, especially if you're using the plugin. First bass, I was able to hear around 25 hertz. I didn't notice any really outlandish changes throughout the entire frequencies range. So they actually did really well that way.
Yeah.
So they can be a good sound. For me, closed back is most useful when I'm on location, for example, and I need that isolation. And I need to make sure the sound isn't bleeding out and getting into the microphone as well. So overall, Atom Audio, for a closed back. I think they did they're good headphones for sure. They don't fit me very well, unfortunately.
I will say also for them, the stereo image all around, I was really happy with.
You liked it?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to open back. First one up, Beyerdynamic DT 900 Pro X. So these are like the 700s except open back, basically.
Yes. I really like these too. I wrote, these sound like the DT 700s, but with a delicious boost of sunlight. So they're a little more expansive. You can tell that the stereo image is a little wider and that, really mid-high, heavy tracks have space to actually be present rather than just being in your ears 100% of the time. You can tell what's going on and what was intended by the mix instead of it just existing but not having any... Not settling in as it was intended, I think.
Yeah, maybe not as coherent as it could have been. Okay.
Yeah. Again, very comfortable. Beyerdynamic seems to have nailed the comfort factor pretty well.
Yeah.
And would I mix in these? Yes, definitely. Maybe not in more noisy environments, but if I'm in, a studio space or a quiet room where I can focus. This is funny because a lot of the things that disrupt me when I'm editing or mixing in headphones don't have to do with actually being noisy, but with being distracting.
Oh, okay.
Like I hear footsteps and I'm like, oh, somebody's coming out of their office. I can talk with them now. So if I'm not going to have distractions, open back is fine.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I really liked how open and airy those were.
Yep, agreed.
Yeah,
okay,
great.
Cool. All right, again, for me, open back almost always more open. The spatial sound stage for an open back headphone is almost universally better in my experience. Like if I stereo imaging and stuff like that.
Yeah.
The DT 900 Pro X, I heard the first bass around 30 hertz. I would say they're fairly neutral. There's a slight tilt toward higher frequency sounds, so like a little bit less bass and a little bit more brightness overall.
I think that's not a bad thing though, because that's kind of more accurate to what you'll hear if you're listening on monitors in a room or in your car or off of a mobile speaker. Generally.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
That's fair. I did find, relative to some of the other headphones we're going to cover next, that they felt slightly veiled. And let me explain what I mean by that. It's almost as if, like for example, in the frequency sweep or when you're listening to some, anything like dialogue and music over a music bed, instead of hearing precise frequencies, it almost felt like, specifically in the frequency sweep, when it was playing a frequency, it felt more like a wider range of frequencies as opposed to a more pinpointed. And some of the other headphones we're going to talk about, it felt more precise, more clear. So they have this slightly veiled sound, which is interesting because if I compare the DT 900 Pro X's to the closed backs, I'm like, whoa, this is way better. I could totally mix in these.
Yeah.
But as soon as
funny.
I compared them to some of these other headphones, I'm like, whoa, they're a little bit veiled. They're a little bit not quite as clear. So
Maybe we should do an experiment where we EQ the same clip in a whole bunch of different headphones and see which one ends up truest, however we end up defining that.
Okay, yeah. So comfort level, obviously, really good, as always, on the Beyerdynamics. So cool. Let's move on to our next one, Sennheiser HD 800S.
Okay. Full disclosure, before I do this one, I could not get these to fit me. I could not. I tried, adjusting the band. I tried doing all kinds of things. I just couldn't get them to a fit where I felt good, like passing judgment on their performance, honestly.
It's like the least clamping force of any headphones
which
that
is
we have.
nice because then they're very comfortable, but they fall off my head. So in any case, I did what I could with this. I put them comparable to the DT 900 Pro X's. I felt like they sounded pretty similar.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right.
I remember having to listen to them years ago and thinking, oh, dang, this is so good. But I wasn't spending a lot of time in other headphones at the time, too. So I would put them about on par with each other, honestly.
Okay.
I did not feel like these...
Didn't feel special.
No.
Especially given their price. These are... It doesn't look like these are available in the U.S. market anymore.
Yeah,
they're still sold in some other countries, it looks like, but they're well over $1,000. I think they were I think they were 1,700 or something like that. Anyway.
Yeah.
My experience with these, I heard the first bass activity around 30 hertz. Pretty neutral sounding, I would say. Slightly more precise per frequency than the DT900 Pro X to my ears. Mm-hmm. So in other words, as it did that frequency sweep, I felt like, okay, it's a little bit more clear per frequency.
It's like, here is the frequency you're looking for, not here's where you might find it.
Yeah. Something funny does happen around between 8 and 9 kilohertz, I found. There's some valleys and mountains around there, so it's kind of doing something funny there. I found these to be extraordinarily comfortable. They feel like you have huge these little like rooms around your ears. Like it's a really open feel, but that's really dependent on the shape of your head and your ears and everything else like that. So I really like them, but I do feel like there's not quite enough. I could use a little more clamping force myself.
Yeah.
So I understand your perspective there. But I also felt like they feel very open in terms of audio and imaging. Yeah. So these were a step up from the DT900 Pro X's in terms of that overall imaging and open feel. It's a little bit more like you're in a room that's been acoustically designed and treated with really high quality speakers.
Nice.
To me.
Yeah.
It's closer to that. It's not the same experience, but it's closer.
And that's how I remember them being too. So.
Yeah, and that's the thing with headphones is like most of them don't sound that way. They sound like headphones, not like being in a room.
Definitely.
So, okay, moment we've all been waiting for. Audiophile headphones. And arguably the 800Ss, HD 800Ss are audiophile headphones as well. But
were you telling me that the reception was not good for those?
It was the 820s, I think. The glass backed, closed headphones. That's a different one. But in any case, let's take a look at these. Yeah. These are the only planar magnetic ones that we're listening to and testing here. Mm-hmm. Let's get your impressions.
Sure. These struck me with their ultra-real bass, mid-details, harmony, and vocal reproduction. That all sounded very lifelike. It was awesome. And all of that happened in a proportional way. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't like some of these others where you put them on and you're like, why am I only hearing the guy singing? Or whatever. Yeah, these also have a great stereo image that reflects echo, reverb, and room tone really well. So that, again, adds to the immersive experience of these. They have the perfect level of isolation. So even though you can see daylight through here, if you look carefully...
Can you?
Well, maybe that's just the reflection of the plane. I thought you could. Whatever it is. There's just foam on the back here behind the driver. Mm-hmm. So it's not like, it's not closed in.
Yep.
I was so immersed in a lot of this listening that I didn't hear you coming upstairs.
Oh.
I didn't hear people cooking in the kitchen.
Okay.
So that was really cool.
Okay.
I wrote, if you want to sound like you're in the room with the big band or Bob Dylan or any especially older instrumental group, this is most definitely the driver type for you.
Wow.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Okay.
But, and here's where I think the whole audiophile discussion comes in. Your hardware is only half the question on whether or not you actually get that playback effect, because it depends on how the track has been mixed.
Okay.
Yeah. So if the track has been mixed in a way such that these can recreate that, or if it was recorded in a way that, will sound like that on adequate equipment, cool, you'll get it. But these will not magically create that experience for you on every single album or song.
Let me make sure I understand. So you're saying on some of the other headphones, you're not going to get that effect no matter what.
Correct.
On these, if it's a good mix, you're really going to experience it.
Yes.
Basically. Okay.
But there will still also be songs that will have been mixed in a way that they will never sound like that.
On these headphones or on anything else?
Or on any other listening equipment.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. That makes sense.
And
okay.
I think that's where audiophiles get kind of up in arms about, my equipment's better than yours. And it's like, you can have the best equipment in the world and still not necessarily get that, oh man, I'm sitting in the studio with these musicians kind of thing. Because you're not.
Yeah.
And, I think you're more likely to get that experience on older music, and that's why I put that I think these would be great vinyl listening headphones. But I was even listening to like some of my favorite jazz tracks that are more on the modern side, and they didn't sound as immersive as, say, like Henry Mancini with a full like studio orchestra that was probably recorded in a big room. You know, and it just wasn't mixed that way, and that's okay.
Interesting. Okay.
So I thought that was an interesting distinction.
Okay.
You know, hardware cannot give you...
Cannot create something that's not there.
Right. It can enable you to hear what is there.
Yeah.
But again, remember that the mix is the other part of the equation here.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Comfort 8 out of 10 for me on these. Would I mix dialogue in them? Maybe, yeah.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I wouldn't do like heavy EQ or tonal work on them, but yeah.
Why not?
Well, I don't, and you will add to this, I'm sure. I don't think they're very neutral.
They're not necessarily neutral.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
Cool. All right. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give you my impressions. So first bass I heard on these when listening to frequency sweeps was about 33 hertz. But what's interesting, listening to other material, the way that the bass is controlled in here is phenomenal.
Yeah.
It really is. It's the next level up. Even compared to the more expensive Sennheiser HD 800s, I thought.
Yeah, me too.
I would say they're pretty neutral up to about 5 kilohertz, and then after that, some funny business happens. And don't misunderstand. I was having a great time listening to music with these. I was loving it. It was a lot.
Experience.
It was a lot of fun, and I was hearing instruments and things and spatial experience that I have not experienced before.
Yeah, on any listening system.
So these were really, really good at that kind of things. But between 6 and 15 kilohertz, there's some valleys and mountains. But these were the most comfortable headphones I've ever worn also. Because in addition to the really, nice kind of memory foam feeling ear cups, you also have this headband with a leather strap, but it can also rotate this way. There's a hinge at the top.
Adapt to any ear placement.
Yeah, it's incredibly comfortable.
Like and they do adjust up and down.
You adjust the leather strap is essentially what you do, the suspension strap. So super, super comfortable. This is a case where when I was listening to music in particular, the instruments are super distinct over other headphones. I'm not sure I would use them for mixing, though, just because, again, they do feel somewhat colored.
Yeah. These ranked...
But it's lovely if you're listening to stuff.
Yeah.
Music, even dialogue sounds really quite good.
These would be great podcast headphones if you liked your podcast host's voice.
Yes. If you don't like your podcast host voice, then you need to do something else. But I think the imaging was the best on these of all the ones that we listened to. And these were the ones that were closest to the experience of listening in an acoustically designed room with really good speakers. So they felt that open.
Definitely,
So overall, I would say if this is representative of planar magnetic technology, I'm wowed. I am actually really impressed. They do make a difference, and the sound experience is, I would say, the next league up from dynamic drivers for sure. So I do understand why audiophiles on a budget would like these headphones. These are $500 headphones.
That's not bad.
That's not bad for what you're getting,
Dang.
I'd say.
Yeah.
They are made, I believe they're handmade by the guy that runs the company in Ukraine.
Okay.
Igor.
Yeah. Well done, Igor.
Yeah, well done, Igor. So I would say you took Skeptics and you have our respect at a level, right?
Yeah.
Like, we're not going to probably start mixing in these, but I'm darn sure going to enjoy some music in these for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Cool. All right. Thanks.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Get out there and make some great sound.